Welcome to the Late Life Lesbian. My name is Emily Better. I'm the Late Life Lesbian life coach and a late life lesbian myself. So for me, what that means is I did not discover my true sexuality until later in life, after I've been married to a man for 11 years and, having a son with him. And during that time, I discovered my true sexuality. Ended up making the decision to get divorced. I came out and I now help other women go through this journey and process as well. So today I have the opportunity to meet and chat with a couple experts. And yeah, I would like to introduce you to Anne-Marie Zanzal. She is a Master of Divinity, and Barb Rowlandson, two experts. Both of them can guide you on your journey. Now, Anne-Marie and Barb are coming out and divorce support coaches as well, who work with the later in life LGBTQIA plus community. So what is later in life? This is sort of a self-defining term, with some people being as young as maybe 25 and then all the way going to over 70. So Anne-Marie started Lotus Group Coaching for our community in 2018. She's a graduate of Yale Divinity School, an ordained minister in the Progressive United Church of Christ, a hospice chaplain, and a bereavement counselor, an adult development training expert. All right, and then Barb started working with Anne-Marie in 2021, originally joining her as the content manager and producer on Anne-Marie's podcast, Coming Out and Beyond LGBTQIA plus Stories. And Anne-Marie soon realized her extraordinary gifts, and she now helps her coach the Lotus Group Community. Besides working with Anne-Marie, Barb is a Humanist Officiant, flower farmer, and master candidate, earning a degree in counseling psychology. Now you can find out all about them and their work at annemariezanzal.com. There'll be a link in the description below this video where you can check that out. And then if you stay with us all the way to the end, they have a very special offer for their later in life conference. This is Wing Women Weekend in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and they'll be sharing that very special offer with us at the end. All right, now let's go ahead and welcome them. All right. Well, so welcome. I'm very glad to have you guys here and to have you on. So yeah, did the introduction, and Anne-Marie, is a later in life lesbian herself and also works with women. And then Barb, you are, I guess, helping out with all of this as well. So yeah. Tell me a little bit about yourselves and, how you found yourself on this journey and yeah, what you're doing now.
So, Barb, do you want to go first or do you want me to?
Oh, well, alphabetical order. You start with that, so go for it.
Yeah. Well, Emily, we're really glad to be here today. Both Barb and I work together, and so we're also both later in life lesbians. And we both sort of represent different types of later in life lesbians, because I'm somebody who always sort of knew, had my first awareness that I might be attracted to women when I was in my late teens, early 20s, but I always wrote it off as, every straight girl is 3 drinks away from a lesbian encounter. And so I thought that was me. And so I was groomed by my family and my religion and my community to get married and have babies. I'm an overachiever, so I did do that, and I had 4. I was married to my ex-husband for 27 years. And when I was in my early 40s, I read an article in Oprah Winfrey magazine, which talked about the fluidity of women's sexuality. And it was it felt like somebody threw me a life vest. Because I realized, even though I had started down the straight road, I didn't have to stay on this road. And I told my then 16-year-old daughter, she's 33 now, and she's going to be making me a grandma in 6 months.
Oh, that's so exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah. She was 16 then, and I said, if something ever happens to Dad and I, don't be surprised if I end up with a woman. She has no memory of this conversation whatsoever, but it was very significant to me. And so it took me about another 10 years. I started down a ministry path because I am an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ. So I started down the ministry path. And I would put my toe out of the closet and then put it back in. And it just took a long time. Tried to find support from therapists. And they really, I'm just going to be honest, sucked at it. But then again, I also know that the only person who can name my sexuality is me. So I was looking for someone to say, yes, you're a lesbian. And no one was going to say that, but they weren't really helpful either.
Yeah,
And
I've heard that a lot.
yeah. And then the final time what happened to me was I was ordained. And so there's two schools of thought to that. So I had been thinking and working towards that for about 10 years. And so, maybe my brain finally had space and time of it to like start thinking about all this stuff again. Or, when you are ordained, God ordained your whole self. And so part of myself is queer. And so that began the process of coming out. And this time, what I did differently, which I think a lot of your listeners do, is I Googled. I Googled late in life lesbian, and I found a Facebook group. And all of a sudden, I had women talking about things that I had only thought in my head. Because up to that point, I had been very, very isolated. And what I realized and what Barb and I preach all the time is about finding community, because both Barb and I have had that experience of isolation and thinking we're the only one.
Yeah.
And so after that, I met that group, and I met my wife in that group. And if you want to hear that story, I can tell you about that. But she's been out for 40 years. And I, after a couple of years, I realized that I could help our community. Because I'm, my experience as you read in the intro is a lot. And so I started coaching people, and I started with small mutual support groups. And then over the years, it's grown, and I've become a better business owner and all those things like that. And so now, and Barb came in, as we said, in 2021. And, all of a sudden I have a business partner, and it's nice.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. And Barb is fabulous with our clients. And so and we've been growing ever since.
That's
So
amazing.
that's my story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I love that. And I love what you said too about, counseling and therapy. I feel like there are a few out there that are great and do an amazing job. And, I'm so thankful for the women that do say, I found an amazing therapist. I'm like, that's amazing. But I have heard horror stories of other women going to counselors or therapists that are just like, oh, just, have sex more, or like, you just need to find something to rekindle with your husband, or, you just must be bored. Like, this is normal. And like very dismissive of the feelings and the experience that have caused women like that, they've shared with me to go back in the closet for years because they think that they just have to sort it out and figure it out and get past this phase. So yeah. And what you said too about finding community, it's so important. I felt that way myself, and actually through this YouTube channel and sharing my story is what brought other people to me, where even for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone, so that led to more connections and resources. So yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. So yeah. Barb, would you care to share your story?
Yeah, sure. My
Okay.
story is a little bit of a departure from Anne-Marie's,
All right.
where now it would be disingenuous for me to say that I had zero inkling about my queerness. I did have a couple of experiences in my youth with girls and women, but I kind of filed those two. But first of all, they weren't that great, and I figured, oh, I guess I'm not queer. I guess I'm not a lesbian. So I really firmly planted myself in the heterosexual camp. And I went on to get married when I was 23. I was married for 21 years. And all of that piece of me just stayed tucked away for a really, really long time until I had a catalyst relationship.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a friend of mine who obviously lived in the same community. She was somebody I had admired from afar for a really long time. I've always been really fascinated with people who blur gender lines, and she was a butch lesbian, very dapper woman who, dress up in suits and bow ties. And She was also doing some really good work in the community and an influential person. And I I had been dying to meet her for a long time. And when we did finally meet, we became friends.
Mm.
And it was over a year later that she confessed to having some feelings for me. And I said to her, I I can't. I'm not into girls. So, and sort of shut that down. But what I found was that, her expressing that really kind of opened up that piece of my mind, wondering, and I'd been unhappy in my marriage for a long time. I was in a very lonely marriage.
Mhm.
And I had known for a good like 10 years that this wasn't going to last for me. And I was just kind of biding my time until it was the right time to leave.
Yeah.
But having a catalyst really threw gasoline on that fire. And I found myself one night, so my catalyst had started dating a woman.
Mm.
And she texted me about it, and like as girlfriends do, like, hey, guess what? I met somebody and I had a sleepover. And I remember being like, "Oh,"
Oh,
like,
yeah.
hmm, oh, you're supposed to like me. And why am I lying awake at night thinking about her in this way?
Mm.
And then I came to the realization that, yeah, I did have those kinds of feelings for her. And what I came to understand later on was that these feelings of admiration that I had for her,
Mm.
I have also had for other women in my life. Um, I've had a history of having very intense friendships with women,
Yeah.
and and really admiring women. Oh, I admire her so much, but not really making the connection between the admiration and the sexual attraction,
Mhm.
because I had placed a mental block in between those two things. So she was the person who kind of shoved that mental block aside for me, and I did make that connection. So I chose to leave my marriage, and then started a relationship with her. And it didn't last, as so many catalyst
Mhm.
relationships don't. I'm not saying that they're all doomed by
Yep.
any
Yep.
means. Many do work out and many don't, because it is a very challenging time when
Yes.
you're
Yes.
unraveling a marriage and
Yes.
going through divorce and dealing with all the logistics of marriage, plus, the relationships and how they're changing, and with my children as well. There's so much else that's combusting around you when you're going through separation and divorce, that becomes very, very stressful on catalyst relationships. And if there isn't the foundation there to, you know move forward, and
Mhm.
then they tend to break. So after that, I did the Coke and Pepsi challenge. I
My wife did that. Yeah.
decided, okay, I'm going to open two online dating profiles on two different sites, one for dating men and one for dating women. I'm not going to mix the two up.
Mhm.
And I think it took me like less than 3 months before I was like, I'm shutting this account down, and I am only dating women from here on in, and I've never looked back. So I very jokingly say my catalyst, there's a switch in the middle of my back, like an on-off switch, and she flipped it on, and I just can't reach back there to to turn it
Yeah.
off again.
or
I
you
actually
or
have
you or you don't want to reach back there.
I
I
don't
just
I
can't
do not
quite
want
get
to
to
reach.
that spot. Yeah.
Oh
Get
darn.
there.
Oh darn.
Yes, absolutely.
I
Yeah,
love I love
I'm
the visualization of that though, because I think that's so true. I What's funny is that in talking about this, I literally just last week did a workshop on catalysts of coming out. And I mean, everything you're saying was like what I had talked about of just there's just this person, this moment, a conversation, something that happens that like flips that switch and it's like or removes that blockage. And as soon as it's like flipped or removed, it's like there's no going back. It just
there's no going.
continues to like build and spiral from there. And but
Mhm.
it's always some sort of moment that I feel like a lot of people can go like that's what it was. And sometimes it's even just a realization, like a waking up in the middle of the night and you're just like, I mean, I've heard a woman that said I had a dream and woke up from that dream and was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm a lesbian. So but once that thought's there, it seems like there's just no like going back. And yeah.
Well, and in our community, we often talk about a catalytic moment because yes, a catalyst can be a person, and it doesn't even have to be like somebody. It can be unrequited.
Yeah,
It can be
exactly.
somebody. Barb has a huge crush on Katie Lang. Katie Lang, if you're listening, please call Barb. But also too, it can be something major. A lot of times it's a death. I was at a podcast convention last week, and I'm going to tell you, Emily, I had 4 people come out to me at that podcast convention. Yeah, I am like the attractor of people.
Yeah.
Right? And most of them had something significant. A parent died. Sometimes you get divorced. Sometimes your child may pass.
Yes.
Something
Family
that
nesting, I feel like even when kids leave and you have to go back to, yeah.
being just the two of you and you have nothing in common anymore. And so one of the things is that catalyst can be also, I'm so sorry about the dinging. I have a 21-year-old who's desperately trying to contact me right now. That's my son. And I said, stop texting me, please. I'm on a podcast.
Hopefully he's okay.
Yeah, he is. Don't worry about it. He just wants my attention. But a catalyst can be a human being, as I said, a human being, but a major life event. And and it doesn't have to be a human for you to make you reevaluate your life.
I completely agree. It's happened in a whole variety of ways. It's just that one moment that then seems to sort of shift everything. And well, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that too, Barb. It's such an interesting story. I feel like I've heard that story a lot,
Yeah. It's funny is when it happened to me, just like Emery was saying earlier, I thought I was the only woman in the world who was experiencing this. I was so alone in this. And since coming to this work, I was astonished to learn just how many women do walk through a huge portion of their lives being really unaware of their sexuality and that is an actual thing. And one of the things that both well-meaning and not well-meaning people have expressed to me after coming out was this assumption that I was hiding something. That's absolutely not true. I remember I have a very loving aunt who said, "Oh, you must just feel like now this weight has come off your chest and you can exhale and just be yourself." And I thought, that's a really beautiful sentiment, but that's not what happened to me. And there's a huge host of reasons, which we talk about in our group coaching program, that keep women in the dark about their own sexuality. And these are powerful influencers, social influencers, religious influence, family influence, compulsory heterosexuality. These are all really, really powerful forces that keep us disconnected from our own wants, needs, and desires.
And that's one of the reasons why I only like working with we like working with women is because most of the women that come out later in life, 80%, in a very informal poll in my support groups, in my Facebook groups, have come from some sort of conservative religious tradition. And so a lot of times we have to untangle what they've been taught, what it means to be a woman from their conservative religious tradition, whether it's Christian or Jewish or Islam. And before we can even get to the sexuality piece, because, like now when I read on Facebook and someone says, "Oh, my husband gave me permission to have a relationship," it makes my skin sort of crawl but I probably used the same language when I came out. My husband is, okay if I go find a girlfriend, or be with a woman or something like that. And, I think it takes a while for us to unpack what we've been taught about being female before we can really go and explore what we want in life. And, for the three of us, it's later in life, it's about our sexuality, but everything we've done is actually applicable to all women, no matter who you are. You know,
Yeah.
you can apply this when you just need, we need to be authentic. And for us, part of our authenticity is our queerness, but for other women, it's not.
Yes.
Once you've learned this lesson, you can apply it a million places in your life.
I love
Oh,
that. I love that
Yeah.
so much. I mean, it's
Mhm.
so true. Just what I see, you know, and I relate, it's also related to coming out later in life, but again, I think it's women in general, and I think it's society and it's culture and it's still this patriarchal, you know, view, and so many women just are so used to sacrificing their needs and their wants and their desires and answering to their husband, the husband being the breadwinner, the husband being the supporter, the husband being this sort of like head of household, you know, and yeah, I see that so in so many women beyond just realizing your sexuality later in life. But when you do work through that, recognize your worth, know that your needs matter, know that you're capable of supporting yourself and doing this on your own. You know, that's a huge thing I run into is women just feeling so afraid that they won't be able to do this on their own. And I think that that again is this conditioning that, oh, you need to have a man, you need to have a partner, you need to have this person to take care of you. And so yeah, a lot to work through with that.
Well, and it's also
Mhm.
true when you see women coming out later in life and their first priority is finding their person. And, you know, because you take the girl out of the heteronormativity, but you don't take the heteronormativity out of the girl.
Yeah.
So a lot of our lives when we are first dating and we all were with men, you know, you look at somebody as this a potential partner, right?
Mhm.
You know, and like the goal, especially in your 20s, is to get married, right?
Yep.
And so we've all done that. And so a lot of times when women come out later in life, their first priority is I need to find a partner.
Mhm.
And we're like, oh girl, you need to find
no.
community. You
Yeah.
don't like that is not a priority. I've I've I did not want to find a partner. I wanted to, my wife knows this. So but I
Uh-huh.
wanted to be single for a couple of years. But I ended up finding someone and I had to work through that because
Mhm.
I was like, do I, you know, this is the first person I've met. But you know, a lot of times, you know, you want to find community and it's really, really important to do that. Dating will come. Dating
Mhm.
will come, but
I
becoming
hear a lot of women have that fear of, but what if I don't find anybody? Do you encounter that too? Like this
Mhm.
fear of just, but what if I go through all of this and then I find nobody? So I sometimes wonder if that push to date is like, but I have to hurry up and make sure I find somebody so that I don't end up alone. And
Mhm.
yeah, just your thoughts on that or what you've experienced with that too.
Barb, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think that's really all or nothing thinking that comes
Mhm.
from a place of fear.
And lack.
You know, right. When we're in that sort of we don't know, we don't have all the information, the future looks blurry. And what do our brains do? Our brains are designed to protect ourselves.
Mhm.
So we often come up with a worst case scenario to sort of prepare ourselves
Yep.
for the worst, when in fact, if we stop and take a minute to look at the situation objectively,
Mhm.
um, that kind of extreme, oh, I'm never going to find anybody, that thought is probably not true. Could it be true? Sure, sure. Yes, it
Mhm.
might be. But the chances are that if you go off, do your own thing, become your own person, and I really feel strongly like
I
I
agree.
am in a committed relationship
Mhm.
to this person here. This is my primary relationship. So when you start to prioritize your own needs, your own wants, you build your community, I mean, we've seen this with women in the group. They absolutely blossom and grow and step into their identities and who they are. And there is really nothing more attractive than a woman who knows herself and is self-assured
Mhm.
and is confident in the skin she's in. And that is what makes people attracted to you as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's just an example of our minds playing a little bit of a trick on us.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
want to piggyback on this. You know, a lot of times when people come out later in life, they really struggle with something called imposter syndrome. They're afraid, oh, I'm not going to fit into the community. I've been married to a man before, blah, 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 all those things like that. And I have found that when people struggle with imposter syndrome in other areas of their life, they will often struggle with it in this as well. But I always want to remind my clients, which I do all the time, is that, you're the total package, honey. A lot of times what later in life lesbians bring to the queer community is our ability to be in long-term relationships. We have had the privilege of being married. We have had the privilege of being in long-term relationships. We know how to do long-term relationships.
Yes.
We know how to negotiate. We know how to do all the things because fortunately, we got all the support from the heteronormative world in our marriage. Like the most divorced couples, the number one is lesbians, because lesbians don't get the support that they need. And the thing is that, when we come to this community, we have also too, this, I always think this, we're also organizers too. Like, as a PTO mom, look, Emily, you too, like Barb too, like we have been PTO moms. We know how to organize shit. We know how to get things done. And I think that's why there's such a blossoming of later in life lesbians who are becoming entrepreneurs within our community, because we can get stuff done. And also, like in Barb and I's case, we tend to attract people that are professionals. So we tend to attract women that have multiple degrees or have a profession or something like that. I'm like, how many lesbians would love to meet you?
Yes.
And my wife, what, God bless her. I remember like, she was never like one of those ones who was a gatekeeper. She was like, oh my gosh, we're such a small community. If somebody wants to join us, God bless them, because this is hard. And so if you want to be part of our community, great. And she saw it. She got a couple things happen to her. One of her really good friends said, it must be nice to date somebody who is not jaded. Because a lot of times when people have been out in the community a long time, because of the forces that are against them, they tend to become a little bit jaded around dating and around romance. And that was true. I mean, I wasn't jaded. And also too, when my wife said to me too, like she said this on a podcast that we were on together. She said, I never considered myself more than Anne-Marie. I just considered myself more of a native in the land that she was entering. And my wife's been out for 40 years.
Yeah.
So, she was just somebody who knew the turf better. And so, I hear so many people who come out later in life sort of afraid of lesbians that have been out a long time. I'm going to say most of them I have found to be pretty welcoming and, are like, they're great, come on in.
I completely agree with you with that. I was in the dating field for about 2 years before meeting my wife. And so I had some of those experiences and surprised, like no one was ever really like against, a newbie, like a new lesbian in the community. But Barb, like you said, navigating as because I jumped right into dating too. I think it's so interesting. I can look back now and see all of it. And it was that I knew how to be a wife and I knew how to be in a committed relationship, but I didn't necessarily know how to just casually date, so that was like a big learning curve and experience and learning those dynamics. But I also jumped in as I was still going through the separation process. Like we knew we were getting divorced and there's this big thrill of excitement, like, oh my gosh, I get to finally be who I am. And so that was where I definitely ran into more women being guarded. Like, what's really going on? Are you actually separating? As confident as I could be about it, that definitely created a hardship that I would say, if it's possible, waiting until you at least get through that divorce and separation to really seriously think about dating. So helpful because you're just in a different place. But
well, yeah. And also too, like your person doesn't have to deal with all of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Barbie, your thoughts? What do you think?
Well, I just wanted to offer you a flip side of that.
Yeah.
Like everything, it's multidimensional, and yes, when you date close after having a separation and divorce, I totally get why more longer out lesbians are a little more guarded about that. The
Yeah.
opposite side of dating a woman who's just come out later in life is the energy and the enthusiasm
Yes.
that we bring
Yeah.
to these new relationships, which I think for women who have been out for a long time, that's exciting for them too.
Mhm.
Because for us, it's, it's a whole new world.
Yes.
We're having puberty 2.0.
Exactly.
We're
Yes.
like, our hormones are all like raging, and everything is fresh and new and wonderful. So
Mhm.
while there is that challenging side of dating somebody who's newly out, there's also that really exciting side of it
Yes.
too.
And I would
And
say
the
I
person,
totally experienced both of those things,
Yes.
yeah, there was absolutely, I think people were like, oh man, like this is great because, and like you said, not jaded by the community, hadn't been out, hadn't experienced everything, hadn't, definitely the longer that I was in the community, I mean, and that was even just a couple years, I understood much more why people were jaded because it was a challenging experience. I'm thankful for it. I'm grateful that I went through what I did, but like my wife, I was like she had a catalyst too, but it didn't work out. And then I was the other woman that she met after that, and I always thought like, are you sure you're going to be okay with this? But then now I'm like, you're so lucky you didn't have to go through all of the dating ups and downs because I'm like it was not fun, but
Yeah, and that's one
yeah.
of the reasons it's so great working with Barb, because I didn't do that.
yeah.
I just didn't. And I know enough, and my wife has dated a ton,
Mhm.
but I know enough about from hearing and talking to people, but I have not experienced that. And so Barb has.
Yeah.
Yeah, I surely have learned all the lessons the hard way, let me tell you. But to be fair, with every person that we date, we learn more about what we want and what we
Mhm.
don't want.
Exactly.
So if you're lucky enough to be like either of you who hit on your person right away or soon
Mhm.
after, then congratulations. You're not going to make too many friends telling the story, I gotta tell you.
I know.
No, I'm kidding. That's amazing that you did, but it's also it's great for the self-discovery process. And
Mhm.
one of the things that when I'm working with coaching clients in the program, really helping them to define what it is that they are looking for in
Yes.
relationship before they ever go out there.
Yes.
It's really, really important to have an idea of not just what we would like,
Mhm.
but what we really need and require and what our deal breakers are. So if we can
Mhm.
have a really solid idea of that, that's great. And also, by the way, that those conditions, those requirements, that list that you make, it may change and evolve over time as you learn things about yourself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's so it's funny as you're talking and saying some of these things. I'm like, have you watched my content? I literally just did another video on like 5 ways to know you're ready to start dating. And that was like know what you want, like have a list, know what your deal breakers are. The more you know yourself and what you want and the standard of treatment that you'll allow from somebody, just the better and healthier relationship you will find. And kind of, I mean, and what you said about, being on your own and being good and confident with yourself, I think that that's so important too in finding and attracting a partner because when you know you and you are truly comfortable and confident in who you are, I feel like that's when you start to attract the people that love you for you. And then that creates like such a healthier relationship dynamic. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. I agree.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, so we've kind of like gone all over the place, which I really enjoy. Yeah, like I never really know how what direction this is going to go in. So this has been great. But so you both have kids, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yep.
I'd love to touch on like how things have been with kids because I know that's just a huge concern that women have. And then the other thing I'd love to speak on too is just and with your like ministry work and having this background, I know that so many people come from, like you said, these religious upbringings that really make them question and self-doubt and feel like they're wrong or bad for having these feelings. So I'd love to kind of hear a little bit of your take or input on, sorting through some of that and yeah, if that's, yeah, that works.
Sure. So that's basically what you're talking about is deconstruction.
Mhm.
So that's when you have your faith traditions or the church you belong to or the synagogue you belong to, and you begin to realize that maybe you don't believe all these things that you've been taught, or you struggle with some of the doctrine that you've been taught. And so you have to begin to sort of deconstruct.
Mhm.
And sometimes for people, this is the thing is so many people in the queer community has been deeply hurt by the church. And so what happens is they're like done. And sometimes they conflate the belief in a higher power with the belief in the church.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to use church as a generic term,
Yeah,
but
perfect.
what I do mean is all faith institutions. So what happens is people, they believe it, they have their faith in a higher power, and they have church. And so what ends up happening is they think this is the same thing, but actually church is one thing and higher power is actually another thing.
Yeah.
And so beginning to ask yourselves, first of all, being angry at God is perfectly okay. If you feel a lot of anger, a lot of people, when they come out later in life, often feel a lot of anger towards their higher power, their ultimate concern, the universe, whatever you call it. And it's okay to have that anger, because if you believe in a higher power, that higher power is big enough to take your anger. But also beginning to deconstruct about your church. What did you love about it? What did you hate about it? Are you done with church? If you're done with church and you feel yourself as a spiritual person, how are you going to attend to your spiritual needs if you're no longer going to be in community in the church? The thing is that there are a lot of denominations and as well as synagogues, and that are actually very open and affirming to queer people. And you just have to do your homework, honestly, if you still want to go to church, if that's still important to you. We've had some clients that have found their faith community is their LGBTQ center.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because, and that's where their queer community is at their church. But, deconstruction is a practice. It's not going to happen overnight. Like any of this stuff, this is going to take years. And so what I have found is, a lot of times people just reject and they're done. I'm done with God. No, I don't believe in God. That's it. I'm done. And the thing is you can take the girl out of the church, the synagogue the girl out of the synagogue, but those beliefs still stay within you. So that is why it is really important to begin to deconstruct those faiths and what you believe, because, believe it or not, even if you're not a real big churchgoer, your family wasn't, but your mom and dad were, you're still indoctrinated by the church or by the synagogue or by the mosque, whatever. And so really like beginning to say, okay, where does this belief that comes about, there should be a man of the house. I'm just going to give you for an example. Okay, there's got to be. So I'm going to have my son. I'm going to tell him he's the man of the house. Where does that come from? Why do you say that?
Why? Yeah.
And why? And so, we're really big believers in mindfulness and being able to step back from things we say just automatically so that we can become aware of what we're saying. Does your son need to be the man of the house now that you're divorced? No.
Yep.
And where did you find it from? Probably from the patriarchy we live in. But if you come from a church background, the men is like a conservative church background, men are in charge. So you need some man to be in charge. And your 9-year-old son, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love it. And I was so lucky to some degree, because I came from Catholic conservative background upbringing. We went to church every single Sunday and, whole thing. I went to Catholic grade school until 6th grade, kindergarten through 6th grade. And and my ex-husband was the one that started challenging my beliefs and asking those questions, like, well, why do you believe that? Why do you think that's okay? When they say this, what is that? And it was the first person that challenged all of that. So even over my course of marriage with him, I had sort of that deconstruction of like my beliefs. And I thankfully had sort of reformed what I felt I believed in after he asked all those questions, doing my own research, coming up with because all along I just believed what my parents told me. You know, this is how it is. This is what you do. This is it. And never really questioned it until I was questioned and I had to come up with explanations. And then when he's making points and I'm going, oh, this actually doesn't really make any sense. I can't get my brain to like compute how that makes sense. And so, you know, looking for answers. And yeah, it allowed me to get to a point of, I was like spiritual, but not, you know, religious, church going, that and kind of come up with my own set of beliefs of what I believe in, what I feel like connected to. And yet, but I know that a lot of women on this journey end up sort of doing all of that at the same time. It's almost like their
Right.
sexuality is that catalyst of, oh my gosh, what does this mean about my faith? And how do I like resolve that conflict? So yeah,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
it's a lot that can happen with all of this. But
Absolutely. And faith is definitely one of them, especially if you come from a faith tradition where you're told, you know, I was raised Catholic too, and I've been a little bit of a spiritual wanderer. But for me, you know, coming out, and it's also, you know, okay to be angry at your church. It's okay to be angry. A lot of people experience a lot of anger around this. But for me, you know, eventually what ended up happening, and I also pulled away from the church for a couple of years, and actually, and then I served as a pastor here in Nashville for about a year at a community, and they wanted me to be the pastor, and I was like, no, I'm just done. And once I freed myself from like, I still believe in Jesus Christ and the teachings of Jesus Christ, but I don't define myself as a Christian anymore. And so what was really interesting is that I feel like my faith has grown so much more now that I am not confined by the walls of Christianity.
And I would agree with that too. I feel like
Yeah.
I have even a deeper spirituality about myself than ever even before. So yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I find that queers are very spiritual people generally. They really are, because they're the artists. They're the, you know, they tend to be very, very deeply spiritual people.
Yeah.
And ask the existential questions. You know, I think it's interesting listening to the both of you talk. It just comes to me that just like no one can tell us what our sexuality is, no one can label us or name us. Also, no one can tell us what our relationship with a higher power is. That is up to each one of us individually. So if you know you feel connected to a higher power, if you feel loved, if you feel whole and accepted as you are, with your you know your sexuality as it is, no one can tell you. No one can tell you. No church, no organization, nobody.
I love that. Yeah, that's so true. So very true. Oh, well, yeah. Well, that was great. Thank you. What about kids? You said you both have kids. How was it going through that process? Just to kind of touch on that, because I know that's just a really big area that women are concerned with. What's this going to look like? How's this going to affect my kids? You know, are they going to hate me? All of that. So yeah.
Can we?
Oh, we can't hear you. Oh. Okay.
Can we give you the good news first?
Absolutely. Yes.
The good news first is if your children are under 9, 10, they're going to be fine. Your divorce will be their normal very quickly. The kids just need to know they're going to be loved and taken care of. And your queerness can be as simple as a conversation like this. Mommy, are you going to have a boyfriend? No, I think mommy's going to have a girlfriend from now on. And that's it. It is little kids are easy.
Yes.
Older kids, anywhere from 10 to about 30, it can be a little bit more tricky. And so for me, my kids gave me a hard time.
Did they?
To be really honest. Yeah, but not not about my queerness, more about that their dad and I were getting divorced.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
really, my therapist that I work with has told me that if somebody gets divorced past 50, a lot of women face a lot of stuff from their kids. And it's what doesn't matter if you're queer or not, because we've raised our kids in a heteronormative society where it's always the woman's fault. So my oldest and my youngest did the best. I think my oldest did it because she sort of understood the relationship, her dad and I, a lot more deeper than the other kids did. My youngest had to go through it all. He was 13. So he did really well. That's the one who keeps texting me. That's and his dad's now texting me. They did well. My middles, not so well. My second child's non-binary. We had a very fragile relationship since I came out. They came out as non-binary a couple of years after I came out. And then they stopped talking to me last year. They didn't talk to me for a year. They were, this is the thing. They were also going through a lot at the time. They're getting their MSW from Smith. They become a licensed clinical social worker. I think they were, as somebody who got their master's degree, a lot of times when people are together, they are, who can have the worst childhood kind of thing. And they were also breaking up with their longtime partner of 7 years. So they were going through a lot. So, but not to say that that didn't hurt. It was about 6 years after I came out. So it was quite a while. We are talking again now. We're hopefully going to work on repairing the relationship. I honestly going to take it very slowly with them because it was quite a very painful experience. And my third child, he is who he is. We get along very well now, but he's always been like that. The thing is about your kids, they are not a unit. Each child will react to this situation depending on who they are as human beings. And my second child in particular had a very, very difficult time with change, even when they were a little child. And so there's somebody who doesn't handle change well. And so I would challenge people is your children are not a unit. They're going to do things differently. Some kids will be great. Some kids won't. You will not lose your children. That's very rarely happened. If you grow up sometimes if you grow up your kids have grown up in a very homophobic place, you may. But what I know now, after having lived through this last year, is you'll be okay if that happens. And we promise you that. You really will.
Yeah.
Barb's also dealt with, it's not adult children, but teenagers.
Yeah. Barb, love
Yeah,
your experience.
I would echo a lot of what Emery said and what I've observed in the participants in our group. It seems to me older the children are, maybe adult children, the more difficult it becomes for them to accept this new reality. That mom is not only doesn't want to be with dad anymore, but mom is lesbian or bisexual. It just doesn't compute for them. Little kids seem to be okay. I have two children. They're not children anymore. They're 20 and going on 24. At the time that I separated from their dad, they were 13 and almost 17. My 17-year-old, who is in the queer community and at the time was male identified as bisexual, and has since transitioned. But at the time, this was really welcome news for my queer child. When I finally told her, she was like, "Yay, we're the gay ones in the family." And it definitely added a dimension to our relationship where we were allied because of our identities. And I think she felt a lot more at ease talking about her queer experiences, and later on her experiences questioning not just her sexuality but her gender as well. I think I was the first adult that she came out to as transgender. Um, and it it was really fantastic. So that's another, thing to think about.
Yeah.
Just as our kids are all individuals, some of them may be queer, and some of them might be really appreciative of having a queer parent. My youngest child had an extremely difficult time with the change, and it doesn't surprise me because my kids, I often wonder, I'm like, how do I have two kids have the same parents and they are so different? They're entirely opposite types of people. My youngest had a real struggle with this. She was very upset. 13 is a delicate time in a kid's life, a lot of big transitions. She was going into 8th grade, which means the next year was high school. Um, she uh, she didn't understand the dynamics of adult relationships, had never had a romantic relationship before. My oldest had, so just didn't understand why mom couldn't be with dad. Thought that my catalyst was a witch who cast a spell on me.
No.
And I know, I mean, oh my gosh. But what I can tell you is that even though it was very, very bumpy and she was very angry, um, it took a little time and it took consistency and a lot of reassurance. I told her when I left, I am committed to getting back on my feet as my own person and having a space to accommodate all three of us within a year.
Mhm.
And that's what I did.
Oh.
And I think when she saw me, follow through with what my promise was and learned that um, mom's still showing up. It's just
Mhm.
she's not there every day. And here's an observation, just from my perspective. I think other women in our group have had similar experiences. When you're not with your kids full time, and that was the hardest piece for me, not seeing my children every day, that broke my heart. However, the gift of that was that in the times that my kids were with their dad, I got a break. I got some restorative time.
Mhm.
I was able to take care of some of this personal development stuff for me.
Mhm.
So, and when I had them with me, my attention was on them, like laser focused, 100%. So the time that we did spend together became high quality time.
Yeah.
And the time we were apart was high quality time for me. So it ended up being really good for everyone all around.
Mhm.
I think it's true, at least with one of my kids, that they ended up having a richer relationship with their dad too, for the
Yeah.
same reasons.
I love that. I was going to say that I've said that after getting divorced and having that shared custody time. It like I honestly love it. Everybody's always afraid of that and worried and what's that going to look like, but I completely agree. It gives you that time for yourself, and then when you do start dating and have a partner, that you can build that relationship because you do have one-on-one time and can dedicate that time to them. Yeah, dedicate that time to yourself. But then, yeah, when your kids are around, you have more like just put more time and focus and attention on them because it's a limited time. And then even like you said, I think that it can build relationships with fathers really well. That maybe thankfully my dad's or my son's dad has always been a really good and involved dad. But I mean, even their dynamic, just one on one, the two of them, their relationship has changed and grown, and I think that that's so important. Again, so another downfall of this is that I feel like as women in heterosexual and heteronormative relationships, we very often take care of everything, and the men just sort of are there is fun dad who comes in and rough houses and then he goes to work and that's it. And often, not all the time, but often they don't actually take on, I feel like, that full parental caregiver role where it is breakfast and dinner and prepping for school and bedtimes and bath times and all of the things. And so a lot of times too, I feel like that builds that dynamic in that relationship for like the father. And I think that can also be a really amazing thing. So
Mhm. Well,
Yeah,
that's what we're talking. Oh, I'm so go ahead, Barb.
I was just going to say, we often say to our group participants, you're not blowing up your life, you're changing your life.
mhm.
So things change. We just evolve with these, you know, changes in our
Well,
lives.
and also too is that a lot of times I talk about the you know, when you share custody with your ex spouse, as long as they're like, you know, some of us get really horrible ex spouses. My ex-husband was actually quite hard with my son because my other three were grown, so we only had my other child, my last child. But one of the unexpected things is that frequently as women, think about, for all the women out there, think about your relationship with your own father. Is it mediated through your mother?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times our relationships with our parents are mediated through one of them. And so what ends up happening, this unexpected benefit, which I didn't know about until I got divorced, is my ex-husband is now required to have a relationship with each one of those kids. And I'm not facilitating it.
Yeah.
You know, he has made mistakes. He has disappointed them. And a lot of times I think that I had always protected him. And now my kids have gotten to experience it. And so another thing that's happened is they have started to realize, oh, this is why mom didn't want to stay married to dad.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he's really hard to do anything with or plan anything with. He doesn't follow through on some of the things he says he's going to do. I mean, all of those things. And, you know, I think that's like, you know, when it comes to children, I know that we have been so groomed that divorce is bad for children. And we really are working hard to change that narrative because it's not. And if you are living in separate bedrooms and your husband's in one room, you're in another room and you're barely talking to him, what are you teaching your kids?
Exactly. What is that relationship? Like, do you want your kids, because they may model what they see, and is that the relationship you want them to grow up and model and to think is normal and okay and appropriate? So,
well, yeah. And if your husband doesn't speak to you at all, do you want your children to grow up with that? You know, a lot of times women will see what that could lead to for their daughters and their sons, and they're like, oh no. They don't want their kids to have that. But, you know, if your kids are growing up in a home where your husband and you are screaming at each other all the time, or there's physical violence or sexual violence, you know, what are you teaching your kids? Get out. There is no prize at the end of your life for staying in a miserable marriage. And this goes across the board, whether you're straight or gay. There's no prize. You don't get gold stars for being married to 50 years to a man you hate or a man you don't really like very much.
oh, I love that. I love it. I've honestly never, I mean, I know that, but just the way you put that into words of that, like, there is no prize once you get to the end, like nobody's giving you anything for doing this. And it's such an amazing way of looking at it. So true.
Well, and also as somebody who worked in hospice for years and years, I'm going to say probably only 10 to 15% of the couples that I worked with at the end of life truly loved. There were couples that loved each other and were very happy with each other, but that's like 15%.
Yeah.
Those aren't good. And so if you're not happy, and also another thing I learned in hospice, people don't regret the things they've done. So if you get divorced and things don't go as exactly as you wanted to, you will make meaning from this. But people regret the things they haven't done. So if you are longing to be in a relationship with a woman, or you want to experience sex with a woman, or any of those things about your queerness, and you don't do it, you will regret it at the end of your life. Go and do the things you need to do, no matter what they are, because you don't want to be on your deathbed regretting anything.
Oh, like clap.
I'm a former preacher, so
true. No, I love it. I mean, it's just been so refreshing to talk to you, ladies, because it's so much of what I've said, what I felt. You know, that was part of. I don't even know how long ago it was, but I would always ask myself that when faced with like a decision or something I needed to figure out or decide. I would ask myself, like, well, what am I, like, when I'm on my deathbed and I'm looking back at this moment, what will I regret? Will I regret that I did it, or will I regret that I didn't do it, you know, and what can I actually live with? Like if I knew tomorrow was like my last day on this earth and I have this chance today, what should I do? You know, and that drastically changed how I approached things. And honestly, I mean, have I made mistakes? Absolutely.
Mhm.
Have I done things I'm not super proud of? Absolutely.
Mhm.
But I would say I really don't have any regrets. You know, it's because
Right.
everything has led me to where I'm at. And I'm really happy and thankful for where I'm at, despite, you know, the things that maybe didn't go exactly how I wanted them to go. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
I
It's so
love it.
funny when I was separating and let my husband know that I was my ex-husband know that I was leaving. The line that I gave him was, I don't know if the grass is greener on the other side, but I have to go find out.
Yeah, I love that too.
Mhm.
I love it.
It was
I've
it
said,
greener, Barb?
yeah.
Absolutely lush and green and lovely.
I was gonna
Lovely.
say
A
that
nice
saying,
lawn.
that saying I have said, I'm like, you know, people always say the grass is never greener. I'm like, the grass was way greener on the other side of
Yeah,
it.
I
So I'm like, this
agree.
is probably one of the only situations where I could say grass way greener.
My grass was way greener too.
Yeah. See,
There are
there we
some
go.
double entendres we could really
Yeah.
work in here, but okay. I love the grass on the other side.
Yes. Yeah.
We love the grass on the other side,
Oh
ladies.
my
Come
goodness.
join us.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, that's amazing. All right. I mean, I think it's probably a great place to wrap things up. But yeah, so now let's share about your like this retreat and the conference. That's what I'm like, what's the word? Lost the word. Yeah, the conference that you guys are having.
So we're having a conference in Provincetown, which is the gayest city in the United States. It's in Provincetown, Massachusetts, on the tip of Cape Cod. It's October 16th through 20th, and we have a very exciting week planned for people. Barb, do you want to tell us what's on our schedule?
Sure. Wing Wingman Weekend is the name of our did I mess that?
No,
Oh my
you didn't, but
No,
I
I
gotta
think
get
you
it
did.
right. Wing Women Weekend. To
and I
really
make Barb say it because I have a speech impediment and I can't
Oh.
say W's.
It's funny that I tripped up on it a little bit there.
It'd
Wing
be
Women
wing women.
Weekend.
It would be wing women weekend.
But we have a ton of fun stuff planned, workshops, some amazing facilitators who are coming to join us, authors, coaches, therapists, change
Adventurers,
adventurers,
business owners.
politicians, business owners, just a really wonderful spectrum of women who are coming to work with our participants. I am facilitating a dating workshop for later in lifers
Awesome.
who have, you know, maybe just starting to tiptoe into the world of dating, haven't dated in a long time, and are wondering about like, oh gosh, well, how do these apps work? And should I even bother doing this? And it can be very overwhelming. So facilitating that workshop. We also have a couples workshop with a psychotherapist, Robin Sisson, who is expert in lesbian relationships and going to be teaching people how to just get the most out of their relationship and make it stronger and better. We have just an amazing lineup of different speakers, and we're also going to be going out and having some fun. Of course, October 16th to 20th, that lands us square in Provincetown's annual Women's Week, and this is the 40th year for that event. So there's going to be lesbians all over Provincetown.
Well, and also besides us, there's all kinds of events. And so the thinking is that, you know, people want to go to these things when they're first coming out and they're really nervous. They don't like it. If you, Melissa Gilbertson, who wrote Late Bloomer, so she's going to facilitate Wednesday night. She lives in Provincetown. She's going to read her book and facilitate. I remember in her book, her writing about going there by herself and so we wanted to create something where you could go with your wing women. And Barb and I and my wife and all the other people are a lot of fun. So we'll be your wing women and we'll go out with you. But we're really hoping to build a community of other women that will go out together and stuff like that. Because facilitating this takes a lot of energy. And so we're hoping everybody sort of like just goes out and has fun together because there's so many different events going on. And so, as we said, it's the 16th through the 20th. And we have given, Emily, you're the late life lesbian. Is that what you are? Okay. So we have given Emily a code. So if you're listening to this, and first of all, you want to learn about what we're at, all about everything, it's at wingwomenweekend.com. And then
I'll put a link below the video.
Yeah,
too,
we'll
so
put a
yep,
link
perfect.
below. And if you would like to help Emily out, and she has a coupon code for you, and that coupon code is LLL. So you can also support Emily's work here because I'm supporting Emily's work by giving her the coupon code. And so you can support Emily's work here so she can keep doing some fabulous content, and you can also come and have an amazing time. So it's wingwomenweekend.com, and the code for Emily is LLL. So we hope you join us. We're going to have a lot of fun.
That sounds amazing. That sounds so
We were
amazing.
so excited. We're like at 30 people. So
wow, yeah,
we're at
that's
30
awesome.
participants. So that was our goal. So we've met our goals. So now we have a new goal of 45.
Awesome. Congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah, we met
exciting.
our goal. Hey, Barb, it's August 26th and we met our goal. We're doing good, girl. So yeah, we want to get a couple. We'd love to have 50 people there. That would be really fun.
Amazing.
Yeah, it will be amazing. I've facilitated, this is my 9th workshop conference I've done. This is Barb's 2nd. And we asked one of our participants the other day in group, like, she goes, because it's life-changing. Being with people, being with your people in a queer space where you're the majority is just life-changing. And you realize that all of this is possible.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
They forge friendships. I've observed at the last workshop that we did in person in Nashville last year, and the friendships that the group participants have forged.
And we even had a romance.
No, that doesn't surprise me, but
no, you put a group of lesbians in a room, you'll find a romance somewhere.
Yeah. It was an amazing thing to watch the in-person dynamic and these relationships forged. And I know like these ladies are still in contact all the time as they become so important to each other. Online stuff is wonderful, but if you can get in person and have those shared experiences together, it's life-changing.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. And yeah, there'll be information below this video where you guys can learn more about that. Yeah. Any final thoughts or?
All right. I'm getting my final thought. Is favorite quote from Mary Oliver, which is, tell me, what do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
I love it. I love it.